GH Deck Building. I am your host Demo, and this is the top 5 green enchantment and artifact removal spells. So this is continuing on with my series, as I've talked about, where I'm dealing specifically with colors and specifically with, removing certain things. So board wipes and artifact and enchantment removal, creature removal, right? So if you are making say for example, a Simic deck, what are my options for artifact and enchantment removal, right? I got to include a few in my deck, and 5 is a pretty good number. I don't think you're ever going to want put more than 5 in there. So what do I want to include in my deck? Or I want to remove creatures, so you can go watch my blue creature removal video, right? What are my options? Say if I'm making a Simic deck for removing artifacts and enchantments, removing creatures, because you have to be able to do both. Removal wins games, as I like to say. So starting out this list at number 5, Return to Nature. This card has now just supplanted Naturalize. Naturalize was sort of the benchmark, right? And now you can destroy artifacts or enchantments and also exile a card from a graveyard. And that is having that option. And I love modal cards in Commander. I love, especially at instant speed, right? The fact that you can do all these 3 things at instant speed is super good, right? Obviously, destroying artifacts and enchantments is what we want to talk about. That's what this list is about. But when there's other options there, that adds points to something, right? That bumps something up the list for me, right? So if I'm going to I have to put artifact and enchantment removal in my deck. So I'm going to put Return to Nature because it also can exile a card from a graveyard, right? Even though it seems a little mundane, it can be like a game saver, right? I mean, someone has a World Gorger Dragon animate dead combo, which I don't know if that should be played in a casual game, but someone's doing that, bam, you break that up just like that at instant speed. Sorry, buddy, you don't win the game today. Being able to exile a card, any card from a graveyard at instant speed is actually a really powerful ability in Commander. So the fact that that is tacked on to also being able to destroy artifacts and enchantments, I think this is a very, very playable card in Commander. Coming in at number 4, Masked Vandal. And, this, I think, has supplanted Reclamation Sage. I don't know. I mean, it's debatable. It's definitely debatable. It's cheaper. It is conditional, though, okay? But it also exiles. So, I'm weighing the pros and the cons here. Reclamation Sage costs 3. There is no conditions. You just destroy an artifact enchantment. Okay. Masked Vandal cost 1 cheaper, which I don't care about that much. I don't think that's super significant, but it exiles. I think that's very significant. There's not always going to be a Purphoros deck, but that's mostly what I'm thinking about with regards to this, is those enchantment gods that are indestructible. They can be really hard to get off the table, and this that deals with them. The Changeling also can be significant. It fits in a lot of tribal decks for that reason. When it enters the battlefield, you exile a creature card from your graveyard. If you do, then you can exile an artifact or enchantment an opponent controls. So that condition can be a little sticky sometimes, but I just don't think it's going to be a big issue because you're probably playing a creature heavy deck already. I imagine. I mean, you're in green. Even if you're putting Reclamation Sage in a deck, I think you're probably playing a creature-heavy deck. I think there's almost no reason you can't just put both Masked Vandal and Reclamation Sage in the deck. For me, though, I just think that the exile puts Masked Vandal over the top, and that's why it's on this list. Coming in at number 3, Nature's Claim. This has become one of my go-to favorites. Just like I said with Return to Nature, having it at instant speed so you can react to crazy things that your opponents are doing really is important. And, you only have to leave up the 1 mana, right? That's it. The fact that you only have to leave up 1 green mana and you can completely spoil whatever plans your opponents might have, right? Keep in mind, when someone casts an Omniscience, and I've seen a lot of people, some guy casts an Omniscience and everyone goes, oh, well, that's it, see ya. And they're like, bye, time to scoop up and play another one. That's not the case at all. Someone casts an Omniscience, right? It resolves, it hits the table. And then as soon as they cast their first free spell, you respond and Nature's Claim it. Right? And what can they do, right? I mean, I guess if they have a counter spell in the hand, they can cast it for free. But barring that scenario, they now have only gotten 1 free spell off their Omniscience. That's it, right? It gets destroyed, their spell resolves, and problem solved, right? So I could go into a whole rant about how important it is to be able to cast an instance in Commander. Instant is really, really important because people are doing crazy busted things out of the blue all the time. The fact that you can instantly respond to stuff is important, and Nature's Claim allows you to only leave up 1 mana, which is great. Also, the 4 life is, I could sit here and say the 4 life is insignificant for your opponent to gain 4 life. However, it can be significant because you can use it on yourself, right? Just like with Path to Exile, where someone will path their own creature so that they can mana fix themselves and get a land out of their deck, or Ghost Quarter themselves. You know, I've done that a couple of times in Commander where I Ghost Quarter myself to go get a land I need. I've saved my own life with Nature's Claim, where my opponent is like, okay, I think they were casting an Exsanguinate and they used the exact right amount of mana to drain my life to 0. And I responded and cast Nature's Claim, gained 4 life. So now I'm at 4 life after they Exsanguinate me. The fact that you can actually use this card to save your life also, again, it sort of adds points to it and moves it up the list. Coming in at number 2, Force of Vigor. If I'm making a Celsnia deck, I'm pretty sure I'm going to put Force of Vigor in there over Return to Dust. I think this is better than Return to Dust. Return to Dust does exile, and I know I already talked about how exile is so much better, but 99% of the time, people are casting Return to Dust on their main phase so that they can get 2 things with it. I don't know if I've ever cast a Return to Dust not on my main phase. Again, I'm weighing all the pros and the cons. It's just like with Reclamation Sage and Mass Vandal. There's pros and cons to both. Who has more pros? And for me, Force of Vigor, you are almost always going to cast it as an instant. And again, I just touted how great casting instants in Commander is. And then also you have that option of I can exile a green card and cast it for free, which of course we know casting spells for free in Commander is super fantastic. Again, you don't want to leave the 4 mana up all the time. So what if your opponent does some crazy thing like cast an Omniscience? You want to be able to respond right away, and this you can if you're tapped out. So again, it's the fact that you're almost always going to cast it as an instant, and you can cast it for free, puts it over, say, a Return to Dust, for example. It is auto-include. Any mono-green deck, this is an auto-include. I don't know, there's very few, in fact, there isn't any specifically artifact or enchantment removals I would put in a mono-green deck over this. And people will say, well, what's your number 1? And we'll see when we get to it. But specifically artifact and enchantment removal, this is probably number 1 for me in a green deck. So then what's number 1? Well, number 1 to probably not a lot of people's surprise is Beast Within. And I know Beast Within isn't technically artifact and enchantment removal, but it's got to make the top of one of my lists, and this is going to be the one because green isn't going to have any board wipes and green isn't going to have a creature removal list. In fact, green has a lot of good things going about it, but removal is not one of them. This is the only green list that is going to be in this series that I'm making because green doesn't really, green doesn't have any board wipes unless you include Azuri's Predation, which I don't really include that as a board wipe. And then they don't really remove creatures very well, except for fighting, which is super conditional. Beast Within, though, is the one spell that does that. So Beast Within is one of the best removal spells in the format, period. Okay, and I'm probably going to make a just top 10 removal spells regardless of color in the format at some point. Beast Within is going to be high on that list. When I started playing Commander, it was real popular, and I wasn't a big fan. I was like, man, I don't really want to give my opponent a 3/3, but I realized very quickly that the 3/3 was very insignificant, even though it probably will be coming at you. People always attack you with the token, right? If you kill their thing, that token's coming at you guaranteed. But also, the fact that you can destroy any permanent is so good. You can even destroy lands with this, right? Your opponent's got a Gaia's Cradle, you can give them a beast instead. That is so good. If we're talking about how do you kill creatures in green, this is really the only spell that straight up just kills creatures because almost every green removal spell is non-creature. There's a whole bunch of non-creature stuff. I didn't really include any of the non-creature stuff like Woodfall Primus. Woodfall Primus is a card I use a lot. The problem with cards like Woodfall Primus, though, is because it's so expensive, you don't want to rely on it, right? That you don't want to be like, oh man, my opponent's got an Omniscience, I got to get it off the board. Where's my Woodfall Primus, right? This is all about solutions. This is all about answers. Even though Woodfall Primus is a good card that I do use a lot, it's not an answer that I want to be looking for to solve my problems. I would much rather have a Beast Within or a Force of Vigor to solve my problems. And that's what this list is all about. And Beast Within makes the top because it does destroy artifacts and enchantments, but because it can do so many other things, it's just one of the best, it's probably the best green removal spell, period, and one of the best removal spells in the entire format. So that's why it is number 1. And that is it for today. That is my 5 artifact and enchantment removal spells in green. Thanks for tuning in.